Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we are planning to build up our 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic parts chassis. Now you may remember this chassis from when we started or restarted after a long break our 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic mechanical restoration, which is going well, and we did use this for a number of parts and kind of reference bits for that. But that project is now in its closing stages. It's mainly waiting for the engine. So the parts we can get from the chassis are now pretty much done, we think. So now our attention, while we're waiting for stuff for that, is kind of turned to assessing this, seeing whether it's going to be a viable tractor in itself or not. So behind me I have a table full of parts, some of which came with this chassis, some of which didn't. Then on the floor here we have two boxes of stuff that we've already got from the US that we've imported, some of which are for this chassis, some of which aren't. And this whole process that we're going to be doing today is simply to work out what's missing from this, what we would need to try and find in America and import over, or if there's bits that are missing that we can make ourselves, and just generally work out at the bottom line whether this is worth doing or not. We have a couple of boxes here to help us organise stuff today. This one is going to be for parts that need to go onto the chassis but we aren't fitting today, and those will be installed when we do this project later down the line. The other box under the table is for parts that are kind of duplicates or spares, so that becomes our stock of spare parts from now onwards. Now there's a few bits that I'm going to go through now that are kind of to do with the chassis as it is at the moment. So first thing, I think we talked about these when we made them up, but we made up these, which are new brackets to get welded onto the chassis there, for the engine mounting, which I'm not sure why the original mounts were cut off, but we'll need to weld these on here when the time comes. Obviously we're not going to do that welding today. That will be one of the early stages of this project when we're working on the chassis for this. Next we have the correct engine pulley for this. Now I'm sure you will have noticed a couple of engines on the bench there, but we're not going to install an engine in this today, so this pulley can just go into the box for now. Now if I go to our boxes of things from America, we have a couple of options for these engine pulley belt guards. Now we'll probably use this one on this tractor and then use this one for our 1960 Rideamatic mechanical restoration. We do actually have this part of it for that tractor. We don't have any of these kind of belt tensioner parts around it, which I think are necessary for running implements and stuff like that. So we'll probably use that to go on there when we get the engine back. So I'll just put this aside for now. Now if we move around this now, obviously you can see the gear here and the chain and stuff are still installed, and back here we have this, which is the part that disengages the drive from the chain and disconnects it from the diff and everything. This has been cut through, so we were already looking for a replacement for that. So from America we have a replacement for that. However, the original one is seized on the shaft at the moment, and we don't feel like spending ages unseizing that today. So this will also be going into the box here to be worked on at a later date. The first components that we're going to put on the tractor are the steering bits. Now, you may remember from our 1960 Rideamatic restoration project that we used the steering column and quadrant from this parts chassis on that tractor. So these are the originals from our complete tractor, which were very badly worn. And to remedy this for this chassis, if we make it viable, we've got a new gear to go on the end here, much better condition, and same for the quadrant. However, today that would obviously take a lot of heating up and unseizing to get this off the end, which is why we left it on there originally. And we don't want to do that today, and we don't want to replace the quadrant and kind of have one new bit with one worn bit. Sorry about the background noise. We've had plenty of air traffic over us today, whether it's the local airport, the RAF, or just random people in helicopters. So we've been struggling a bit with timing for filming. So what we're going to do today for these is put the new parts in a box so that we know that we definitely need to switch these in future and use the old parts for now. But the sequence of events here is that the dash tower has to go on first. Then obviously we're going to have to lift the front of the chassis up quite a bit to get the steering column in, which has to go in from the bottom. Then that kind of has to be mounted with the bearing housings, which there's two of those, one up here, one under the chassis, so that's going to be fun to get to. Then once we've mounted this, then you have to kind of slide the quadrant up past it. So this is going to be very fiddly, and so we will probably cut now and come back to you in just a second with these bits fitted up. We've got all of these bits mounted up now. The steering wheel is kind of half on, but it's on enough that it's engaging with the woodruff key, and it's not exactly going to come off if we knock it or anything like that. Just didn't want to put it on the full way because then we'll have to heat it up and use a puller and do all the complicated things that we did the first time to get it off. Now I wish that we remembered about turning the chassis upside down to do this on our other 60, because that made it a lot easier on that. And obviously we've just done this with the chassis the right way up, which was much more difficult because we kind of had to lift this up to put steering column up and stuff like that, and you kind of can't see what you're doing like this unless you're craned over like that. But that's allowed us to start gathering a list of bits that are damaged or bits that are missing. The key bit that's missing at the moment is the fuel tank kind of stand part, which mounts here and then goes down to this part. You can see on this Rideamatic is this plate, then this brace bit is welded onto the bottom of there. Key part here though is that we can't put the Rideamatic lever on our parts chassis yet because that bolts onto there, so that'll have to just go in the parts box. We can put the rest of the Rideamatic on, but just not the lever, which is unfortunate. Now on the computer here we've got the parts manual up, and we're using that to kind of get the parts numbers for each of the bits that we need. We've identified kind of 5 different bits that we need so far. The starter blank is like a little round bit that goes into the hole in the dash panel where you would have the electric start button, but if this is pull start then you just blank that off. We need the stop button because that may or may not have gotten a bit melted when we applied heat to the steering wheel to get that off the first time. Then obviously the tank support plate that I was on about a second ago, and obviously since that's missing we don't have a fuel tank or the tank straps that hold it onto here either. So that's kind of the start of our list. But now we're going to come back to the tractor and we're going to continue with the front end here and put the front axle on. Now we've talked about this before when doing the 60 project. In these Rideamatic front axles there is a kind of sleeve. I'm not sure we can kind of see the broken ends of it there, and that's how they usually end up, because that sleeve goes through this front axle and then into these parts in the chassis. That usually just kind of cracks like that one has. So that's where a lot of wear starts to happen on these. But obviously we'll need to make up one of those when we do this project, but that is not a job for now. for the moment I'm just going to put a bolt through here. There we are. That's on there. And do this nut up on the back, and then we can attach the stub axles onto here. Now I'm not sure which stub axles we actually took from this parts tractor, whether the ones on that tractor are the originals or if we took them from here, I don't know. But obviously these will just get fitted onto here for now. And then we need to do the steering rods. We've got the stub axles and the steering link between the two on now, and we would put a drag link on now from here to the quadrant. However, the drag link for this tractor is currently on our orange 1962 Rideamatic because that didn't have one, and we stole the one from here to get that mobile. Wasn't in great condition anyway, so we probably need to make up two new drag links, one to go on here and one to replace the worn one that we moved to the orange 62. Shouldn't be too difficult, it's just getting a bit of bar, putting a bend in it with the press, and then putting a thread on both ends, and then some new tie rod ends, and that's pretty much complete then. So for now, what we'll do is just turn this by moving the front wheels manually. Speaking of front wheels, we are putting on our spare set of Rideamatic wheels, which these have been on pretty much all of our Rideamatics at some point, and we got these in the same auction lot as our blue 1961 Rideamatic, which I think was the first kind of series that we did on this channel, and that also came with a reel mower that you haven't seen before on the channel. I'm sure that will feature at some point in the future. Now we don't have any spare washers, and we're going with the old wheel bearings and everything, so there is going to be a bit of play, but that isn't the point of putting these on. It's just to get it mobile, really. And for this side we've got used E-clip, which I think came off of here previously, so I will just chuck that back on there. There we are, that's on. I can take this block out now. That should be supported, perfect. And go around to the other side. And we didn't actually have another used E-clip, so we're going to be putting a new one on this side, which answers a question that one of our Bolens friends here in the UK, Andrew, asked us quite a while ago. I'm not sure whether we actually answered or not. But what you need to hold these wheels on a 1960 Rideamatic is a 5/8 E-clip, which, Andrew, if you need some and you don't have any, then we can chuck a couple in the post for you. But that's different to the split pin that a 1961 or 62 Rideamatic uses. Anyway, that is on now, and that is all secure. So I think for now this front end bit is done. The front of the tractor is now on its own 2 feet, so that is good. And the next parts to go on would have been the Versamatic here, and also the, I believe this is a PTO engagement for if you've got PTO driven attachments. Not fully sure how you set this up yet because we haven't had a look at our PTO attachments, but the reason I say would have is because we can't actually mount these because we're missing a vital part, which is the supporting shaft that goes through here, then goes through this hole here, holding the Versamatic onto there, and then it goes into here. So it goes through plenty of different things and means that none of this can go on until we have that shaft. That's quite unhelpful to not have that, but that is the purpose of what we're doing today, is trying to find the parts that we're missing, and without reassembling this tractor we wouldn't have found that, I don't think. And the part looks simple enough to make, probably just a bit of lathe work to do that. And the good thing is we spotted it before we got the engine back for this tractor, so in theory we can whip these parts off quickly and actually copy the one off of here, and we'll have one made up to the exact specifications, ready to put this stuff on in future, but that isn't today. But if I go over to our box from the US, we have a couple of parts for this stuff. Here we have a used control knob which will go on the PTO engagement lever there. Not going to put it on yet because that thread needs cleaning up. This needs cleaning up, and that'll be a kind of finishing touches after this has all been painted up at some point in the future. We also have this, which is a reversing disc for the Rideamatic. That one has a chunk out of it, and this one is in much better condition, so that's why we got this. Just like to thank Barry in the US for the amount of parts that we've gotten off of him. Very helpful for this project, and they're definitely going to improve the quality of some of the bits on here. But these will now go into the box along with the Rideamatic and that PTO engagement lever, because none of those bits can go on for the moment. And I think now we'll move to this side for the lift lever, which is going to be difficult to put on. They are usually, but especially with this one, because the chassis has been bent round. So we're going to do that off camera because that's always quite fiddly to get that in there, get the bolts up and everything. Then we'll probably just whack the foot pegs on too, just so they're out of the way as well. We have the lift lever on now, and it's a good thing that we cut because that took quite a while, mainly because of all the bent chassis work around here. You can also see that we put the foot pegs on, and this one is loose because that's as far in as that bolt will go before it kind of gets stuck. Ideally that thread needs clearing out, but we should probably straighten out the chassis first to make sure that that captive nut part isn't damaged from the chassis bend that's there. So that's kind of it for the front. Something we did forget to mention a minute ago though was the Rideamatic lever, which has been modified here. You can see this tab's been welded onto it and it's been kind of bent, which isn't helpful. And then this part is quite badly damaged there actually. You can see from both sides. And we are missing the kind of knob or handle part that goes around the button. So this will obviously take quite a bit of work to make it look as it should do, so we may well look for a replacement one of these. Obviously we can't mount this at the moment, as we said before, because we're missing the fuel tank bracket, so this can just go into our box of parts to be installed. Now we're going to move towards the back of the tractor, and the next thing we're going to look at is the chain tensioner, which should be mounted using those two square holes there, but obviously it isn't because someone's tightened this chain up and made it so small that it's really tight without a chain tensioner. And with how tight it is, I did just try lining these up a second ago. We can't actually mount it on there with the chain as it is, so they are going to stay off for now. This is the one that we did have left over from before. This originally came off of the other 1960 Rideamatic, but we didn't want to use it because of how worn it was, and therefore we don't want to use it on this one either. So from America we've got this, we've got another one which is much less worn. It's actually in better condition than the one that we put on the other 1960, but that's okay. So this will go on here when we do this restoration in future, but for now this can just go into the to fit box along with the remaining chain that we have left over from when we put a new chain on the other 1960, because obviously we're not going to want to reuse this one, it's too short. And we've got our first part here for the kind of leftovers box or duplicate parts box, so that's good too. Now onto the rear bodywork, and we have a couple of choices for most of these parts. Starting off with the seat stand, this is the original from this parts chassis, but as you can see it is quite crusty and very badly pitted on this bit. The good thing about it is that it sits at the right angle, which is flat here. Both of those angles appear to be correct, However, we're going to use this one instead, which is just a spare one we have. Obviously the angles are wrong, as you can see by the fact that it sits more inclined backwards, but we had the same problem for the one that we used on our 60 that we restored, or mechanically restored I should say. So we know that that job isn't too big and we can just do that on our press, not a problem. So we'll use that one. This old one can go into the duplicates box in a second. Next is the toolbox. This is the original from this chassis. Obviously that is badly rotted out, so we don't really want to use that one. So we're going to use this instead. Again, spare one that we've got. And on this one, at least it has this kind of chain guard bit, whereas that's actually rusted out of this one. So again, that's something for the duplicates pile, although I'm not sure that's really usable again. If we come over to the tractor now, this can go on here and slot this in here as well. And now we can just bolt these parts down, then choose which fenders we're going to use. We've got those bits bolted on now, and we have another choice to make here, which is fenders. These are the originals. Nothing wrong with them really. They have quite a bit of surface rust, and there is a bit of pitting on the back here, not much, but still a bit. However, we have another option, which are these fenders here, which have a lot less surface rust and don't feel like they've got anywhere near as much pitting, so we'll probably use these. Now these mount onto the toolbox on the side here, and in a minute we'll have to cut so that my cameraman can give me a hand either holding these or putting the bolts in, because they can be difficult to line up on your own. Let's drop in a second. Something we were surprised about is the fact that this chassis actually has a back plate. We didn't think it did, which is why we actually got another one from the US, but that's fine because we're missing this part on a number of our Rideamatics, so that can go for something else. We also found this tow hitch, which it must have had on it, which is obviously homemade and quite poorly made. However, the concept isn't too bad. It mounts on there, and I mean, it would do the job, so we might try refining this concept for one of our other Rideamatics. But that isn't today's issue. This can also get bolted on now too in the back here, and obviously this chassis is missing all of the rear lift kind of brackets and stuff, the two side arms, the cast part that mounts on the top here between the two, and then the lift link that goes from the cast part to the lift lever. All of those bits are quite difficult to get hold of. Usually they come from the US when we've gotten them before, but we need those bits for a number of tractors, so we need to kind of keep an eye out for whenever they come up for sale, because they do go quite quickly. But what we'll do now is just chuck this in the back of the chassis rails and then mount the fenders and come back to you in a second, and we'll have a bit of an update to see where we are. We have those bits on now, and it's starting to look a lot like a tractor now. But the table is looking very empty as well, so we'll kind of go through what's left. Obviously we've got the hood here, which has a couple of chunks out of it at the mounting points, so we'd have to do some fixes to that or get a replacement. Two different options there, and it's slightly bent at that point. That's easy enough to fix. That would mount like that, and then go to the grille, which we obviously don't have, so that's quite a chunky part to have to import. Ideally we would find one in this country, but that's quite a rare idea. I'll just put that next to the box for the parts to go on for now, because I'll cover the entire box pretty much. Another thing we've got here is the throttle cable, which that functions as it should do. Is a bit bent, so we'll need to straighten that out, but I'm sure that will be fine, and that's perfectly reusable. We won't put this on yet because obviously we don't have an engine to fix it to, so it'll just kind of be dangling there, so we might as well put that in the parts to fit box. Also, you may have noticed that we don't have a seat at the moment, but we know where we can get one of those from quite easily, so that's not a problem. Then pretty much the last thing to cover is rear wheels. Obviously these have narrow rear wheels which fit a 6-12 tyre. We don't have any of those for this, but we've got a spare pair of kind of tube frame size chevrons, which I think actually came off a wheel horse at some point. And for now we can put those on there just to make this mobile, but we can't do that right now because our positioning of axle stands won't allow us to do that at the moment. So what we'll do now is just quickly move these axle stands to a point where we can put these wheels on, get these on, and then after that we can put this next to the other 60, do a bit of comparison and go over our definitive list of bits that are missing or damaged. The rear wheels are on now, and we've turned this around on the bench so that we can kind of show it properly compared to the other 60, and this is starting to look like a complete tractor, and it's definitely looking more viable than before when we just had a bench full of parts. So it's nice to have those organised into our boxes and on the tractor, and now we have a definitive list of what this needs, which if we go over to the computer now, we have this definitive list of missing or damaged parts. We're going to look for those in the background now, so you probably won't see this machine again until we've found all of those parts, and then we can start this project. But this won't be for quite a while because I'd imagine you're all tired of watching Rideamatics on our channel now, with the 60 mechanical restoration over there and our 3 Rams project. That's a lot of Rideamatic videos, so I'm sure you would like something a bit different, but we would like a bit of feedback about what you'd like to see when we come to do this project. Obviously this is going to be different to that machine in that we're going to do a full paint restoration on this tractor. So question to you all is whether you'd like to see something similar to the mechanical restoration on that, where we go very in-depth on some of the mechanical refurbishments that we're making, or would you like for this one for us to kind of give the highlights of the mechanical stuff, seeing as you've probably seen it before, and then put more attention on the new things like preparation for painting, and any other curveballs that we find with this that we didn't have with the other tractor. So please do let us know in the comments what you'd like to see when it comes to the project on this machine in the future. Now it's good to have all of our parts kind of sorted and to have this chassis relatively assembled. The only issue is now we've got to find somewhere to store this. So that's a small challenge, but that's for us to worry about. So that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.